Year's end, we reflect on so many issues, many personal, some political and international. The most profound issue for thinking people concerned with democracy and freedom, as opposed to Marxism and destruction, is the likely removal of Donald Trump, which presumably will give the green light to cancel culture, Black Lives Matter and every other Marxist outfit. Trump is given little credit for the speech he made on Independence Day this year, July 4, at Mount Rushmore National Memorial, when he condemned, and I quote, a merciless campaign to wipe out our history, defame our heroes, erase our values and indoctrinate our children. Well, I'm sorry, none of this resolute language can be guaranteed under Biden and Harris. After all, these are people who aren't prepared to properly fund the police. The District Council, which is home to Grantham in England, the birthplace of Margaret Thatcher, is planning to underwrite a statue to the great lady. And we already have the promise that more than 1,000 people will turn up at an egg-throwing contest on the same day that the bronze sculpture is unveiled. Is this the world we're leaving to our children? Trump was hated by many because he fought against all of this. Not only that, pre-pandemic, his government created 7 million new jobs, 5 million more than the experts projected during the previous administration. The unemployment rate pre-pandemic was the lowest in over half a century. The unemployment rate for African Americans, Hispanic Americans and Asian Americans, the lowest in history. African American youth unemployment, the lowest in history. African American poverty had declined to the lowest rate ever recorded. The unemployment rate for women was the lowest in almost 70 years. Veterans' unemployment dropped to a record low. As Shakespeare would say, this is a man more sinned against than sinning. And yet this is part of the campaign that has been waged against him. Well, it may not be over yet. This was President Trump earlier today.
Within days after the election, we witnessed an orchestrated effort to anoint a winner, even while many key states were still being counted. The constitutional process must be allowed to continue. We are going to defend the honesty of the vote by ensuring that every legal ballot is counted and that no illegal ballot is counted. This is not just about honoring the votes of 74 million Americans who voted for me. It's about ensuring that Americans can have faith in this election and in all future elections. Today, I will detail some of the shocking irregularities, abuses, and fraud that have been revealed in recent weeks. But before laying out just a small portion of the evidence we have uncovered, and we have so much evidence, I want to explain the corrupt mail-in balloting scheme that Democrats systematically put into place that allowed voting to be altered, especially in swing states, which they had to win. They just didn't know that it was going to be that tough because we were leading in every swing state by so much, far greater than they ever thought possible. While it has long been understood that the Democrat political machine engages in voter fraud from Detroit to Philadelphia to Milwaukee, Atlanta, so many other places. What changed this year was the Democrat Party's relentless push to print and mail out tens of millions of ballots sent to unknown recipients with virtually no safeguards of any kind. This allowed fraud and abuse to occur on a scale never seen before, using the pandemic as a pretext.
Using the pandemic as a pretense, eh? Well, Maurice Newman's an Australian businessman who served in a range of roles in public life and business. He's a former chairperson of the ABC and the Australian Stock Exchange and a former Chancellor of Macquarie University. He has written splendidly and informatively on this very issue, and he joins us tonight. Maurice, thank you for your time. You write that, quote, Donald Trump is and was an outsider. And as you say, whatever his critics at home and abroad say, his supporters, and there are millions of them, see him as a president who finally stood up for the United States of America.
Well, he's not a globalist, and all of the people who are opposed to him are globalists. They are the big tech, big media, the crony capitalists who are into renewable energy and all of those global-type activities. And, of course, he stood up a lot of people and upset a lot of people in other countries. I mean, the United States is now getting $300 million a year more than it was prior to Trump because he stood up NATO. NATO had been just free riding on the United States, and it took him to actually press what they had all agreed to do but hadn't honoured. Now, he was vilified in the media as being a disruptor and all of these things. In fact, for the last 4 years, Donald Trump has been mercilessly hounded by the media, by his political opponents in a way which I don't think any president in history has been.
Then, of course, he brokered the peace between the UAE, Bahrain, Sudan and Israel. And as you rightly said, any one of which would have ensured Obama another Nobel Peace Prize.
Absolutely. But the narrative was, oh, well, all those countries were already engaging with Israel, so it really didn't count.
He said that he is the victim of the greatest political witch hunt in history. I tell you what, it's hard to disagree with that, isn't it?
I don't think anybody can disagree with that, Alan. And moreover, what I find particularly sinister is what they call the deep state, where you've got bureaucrats who are Democrat, Green, or whatever their political leanings are, actively campaigning in a way to get rid of him. You remember the Russian collusion and all the impeachment that went on. And yet I saw just before the election James Comey, who was the former director of the FBI, on Twitter with a Biden-Harris T-shirt and a mug which he was brandishing Biden-Harris and vote for the country. Now, this was a supposedly non-partisan bureaucrat in the FBI.
I mean, it's more than a coincidence, isn't it, that Biden underperformed Hillary Clinton in every state other than where the Democrats were administratively in charge and where there were significant electoral college votes available.
Well, the other thing too, Alan, is the collusion of people like Twitter and Facebook.
Yes.
Zuckerberg and his wife, I think it's Priscilla Chan, had given $400 million to a charity to dispense to the various electoral offices in order that, because the Congress hadn't voted sufficient money, but they were putting up postal polling stations in places which were predominantly Democrat, not Republican. So you've got this going on all the time.
Yes, indeed.
So I don't think there's any question.
I mean, they wouldn't. I mean, Twitter and Facebook blocked the readership of that information about Hunter Biden's emails.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no question that Facebook and Twitter are partisan organisations who actively campaign to get rid of the President of the United States.
Yeah, I mean, you make this very valid point. Whatever else you might say, the real issue of his presidency and re-election, you say your words, the emergence of the shadows of a well-organised and powerful movement, largely aligned to the radical left. Until Trump, you said, it had tolerated marginal political change, confident that control of the bureaucracy and the judiciary was an effective break. Having failed to contain Trump, the left is determined under Biden administration to stack the Supreme Court with socialist judges.
And it's not only socialist judges. You've got Janet Yellen, who is his Treasury head-elect, who is coming out talking about the need for Black Lives Matter and all of these left-wing causes. She's going to be the Treasury Secretary if Biden becomes president.
Look, everyone's writing to me. Just a quick one, because we'll talk in the new year about this. Quick one to my viewers about what's called the Great Reset. Everyone's writing to me. Just a couple of thoughts on that.
Well, the Great Reset is going to be the segue from the pandemic. Now that they've got everybody obedient in terms of not leaving the house and doing what they have to do, and we've seen actions from the police in Victoria which are unthinkable in this country. So there's a segue from there into making sure that we control our emissions, that we do what we're told to do with regard to the great, what they call the Green New Deal, which essentially is to pursue policies which are going to be extremely expensive and draining on economic activity.
I think your words were a fascist experiment being pushed by controlling elites.
I don't think that's an exaggeration.
No, I don't think either. Listen, we've got to talk that. It's a big issue. Come January, the Great Reset, they're all talking about it, all the big elites of the world. and we'll analyse it later. Have a wonderful Christmas, Morris. Thank you.
Thank
for all
you,
that
you
you've
too,
done.
Alan. Thank
There he
you.
is. That's Morris Newman.